Have you ever been disappointed by a franchise and just wish you could go back and unwrite all the poor decisions the creators made? Welcome to UnWriting, the series where I rewrite the story of a franchise with untapped potential. For this installment, I'll be discussing Star Wars Episode 7. Instead of completely scrapping The Force Awakens and starting from scratch, I will be keeping the majority of characters and some loose plotlines surrounding them, but the story will be completely different. This isn't a loose structural change, it's a complete rewrite. I'm about to go over some of the changes I'd make from the beginning, but if you want to skip right to my unwritten version of the film, just jump to this timestamp. First things first, I'm dropping the entire pretense of the First Order and the Resistance. The fact of the matter is, these organizations were just lazily slapped together in order to replicate the exact same situation as the original trilogy. I think this was a terrible decision. First, because it's just the same story twice, and that's boring. One argument I hate is when everyone said that J.J. Abrams had to use Episode 7 to remake Episode 4 in order to prove that Star Wars could be good again. No, he really didn't have to do that. This is freaking Star Wars. People were going to go see it regardless. He could have made something totally new, and if it were good, it would have been incredibly successful. The Star Wars name has that pull to it. Secondly, redoing the story of the original trilogy also makes a mockery of the original trilogy. Luke, Han, and Leia, all of their sacrifices and hard work are completely meaningless now. The fact that they tore down the Empire and destroyed the Death Stars doesn't matter, because a new Empire is here, enslaving the galaxy and blowing up even more planets with an even bigger Death Star. And thirdly, it just doesn't make any sense. When Revenge of the Sith ended, the next episode began with the Sith in charge of the galaxy. They won the last fight, so now they get to make the decisions. But for some reason, after Return of the Jedi aren't in charge. In fact, they were completely wiped out. What? Yeah, we're scrapping that idea. In this unwritten version of Episode 7, the accomplishments of our heroes will not be for nothing. They will get their happy ending, or at the very least, 30 years of happiness. Han isn't a deadbeat, divorcee dad who falls back into his old ways of smuggling only to get murdered by his own son. Leia doesn't spend her entire adult life fighting a feudal civil war against the very galaxy she's already worked so hard to save, and her entire family doesn't get murdered while she sits at home and cries about it. Luke never tries to murder his sleeping nephew. He never abandons all hope and leaves the galaxy in disgrace, allowing it to fall into the clutches of another evil dictatorship. Unlike the Disney sequels, I'm actually going to try to do my best to respect these characters and their legacies. That doesn't necessarily mean that they'll be safe from all harm, but I'm going to do my best not to make a mockery of them. So no, I'm not going to undo the events of the original trilogy, but I'm also not going to copy the events of the expanded universe either. While some of those stories are legitimately great, many are also pretty stupid. And anyway, if I copied the EU, there wouldn't be any surprise, and that's no fun. Another important change I'll be making is with the way our protagonists are written. This trilogy will center around 4 characters: Rey, Finn, Poe, and Ben Solo. With Rey, I feel it's very important to give her a real motivation. In the Disney sequel trilogy, Rey has no real reason to hate the First Order, no reason to seek out the Force, or any particular inclination for good or evil. She's more of a plot device than a character. The closest we come to understanding her motivation is that she wants to know who she is, but that hardly holds a candle to Luke. Luke was the last kid his age, still stuck on his backwater planet. He had plenty of skill and yearned for something more. He wanted to know about his parentage, but his aunt and uncle refused to tell him anything. It was their deaths at the hands of the Empire that propelled him to take action and tackle the life of adventure he's always dreamed of, and eventually accept his role as Jedi Knight and the one responsible to turn back the heart of his corrupt father. Wow. That's fantastic and intricate. It really shows how much Rey pales in comparison. So I'm going to try to fix that. And also, I'm going to make Rey a total, complete, badass Jedi with awesome Force powers, but not right from the get-go. Unlike the Disney movies, Rey will actually have to work hard and train in the Force first. For Finn, I'm obviously going to have to alter his backstory as a stormtrooper that decides to desert, but I think I have a pretty good alternative that's still in line with that basic idea. Oh, and I won't make him a complete joke after the first film either. Finn is a great character and he basically got sidelined. I won't be treating him so poorly. The same with Poe. I'm going to give him much more of a personality, and more importantly, I'm going to have him actually build real relationships with the other cast. I want these characters to feel real and form organic bonds. Ben Solo is actually a character we'll get to see. He's not just a villain right off the bat. Because I'm not starting this film out with the First Order in charge, Ben never became Kylo Ren. We'll get to see what he's like as a person without that light-dark split right down the middle. Maybe I'll make him evil down the line, and maybe I won't. If I do, you'll actually get to see it happen in real time. Speaking of evil, there's no Supreme Leader Snoke in my unwritten version of this movie. There's no Palpatine either, because he died when Anakin threw him down that big old space tube. Nope, instead of all that, I will be introducing a completely new and unique villain. What? And the final change before we jump into things, all of the new things I will introduce won't just be rehashed versions of some old thing. I won't just give you a bigger Death Star or a rounder R2-D2 or a more wrinkly Palpatine. I'm going to work hard to actually be creative and make something new. So with all that out of the way, here's how I would unwrite Star Wars Episode 7. A long time ago, in a galaxy far, far away. Star Wars Episode 7. Shadow of the Force. It is a period of trepidatious peace for the galaxy. After the fall of the Galactic Empire, Leia Organa has founded the Second Great Republic, guarded by the new Jedi Order. Small skirmishes litter the far reaches of the Republic as old Empire strongholds and new anarchist factions wrestle for control of individual star systems. Wishing to bring an end to this conflict, Luke Skywalker has commissioned Han Solo to search the galaxy for information, seeking to learn the origin of the Jedi themselves. We pan down to see the Millennium Falcon flying over the Earth-like planet of Ashla, shooting at enemy ships. We can see that Ashla is beautiful, with vast green fields, towering mountain ranges, and rushing waterfalls. The Falcon zips in and out of giant floating rocks covered in vegetation as it dodges gunfire from the 4 smaller ships. We pan over to see an ancient ivory temple on top of a massive chunk of floating rock. Inside the temple, Han Solo peeks around a corner, looking into a vast room with a small walkway over a deep pit. Very careful to not lose his balance, Han slowly makes his way across the bridge to the end, where a pedestal stands. Looking both ways nervously, Han then grabs a large book off of the pedestal. He braces for a moment, expecting a trap, but nothing happens. He relaxes, just in time for rocks to begin falling all around him. He makes a face, as if to say, of course this wasn't going to be easy, and then he tries to run. Han bolts across the bridge, dodging everything he can. Just as he makes it back to the ledge, a giant boulder falls right towards him. He braces for impact, hands on his head, but then realizes the boulder is floating above him. He looks up and sees Ben Solo. Using the Force, Ben tosses the rocks to the side, keeping his father safe.
Father, I told you to wait for me. Why must you always be so reckless?
Reckless is my whole shtick. You should know that by now.
Maybe it was back in the day. Now it seems your stick is getting saved by me.
Han smiles and hands Ben the book.
You know, I wouldn't have had it any other way.
Ben's eyes widen.
Wait, this is it. The one Master Luke spoke of.
Well, I didn't see any other dusty old books in there, but you're free to go check for yourself.
Ben glances back at the room, completely crushed by rubble. He then hurriedly makes his way back to Han, who's walking out the way he came. Ben begins leafing through the book, completely geeking out. Kylo Ren was described as a bit of a Darth Vader fanboy, so my version of Ben Solo is a total nerd for the Force, like a scientist obsessed with his field of study.
This is incredible. The very origins of the Jedi themselves. And I have it right here in my hands. Let's see if I can translate.
Han places his hand over the page.
Don't get too invested. Poe's out there waiting for us.
So you two didn't forget about me. I'm honored.
Poe's voice crackles through Han's receiver, and he responds.
Poe, how's it looking out there?
Not too bad, sir.
Poe obliterates an enemy ship, leaving the skies clear.
That was the last of them.
You better not have gotten a scratch on my ship.
You're still on about that? It was one time.
We cut to a shot of Ben and Han boarding the Falcon outside of the temple.
Ben, you owe me a drink.
See, my version of Poe is really cocky. He loves fun, and more than anything, he loves gambling. If a bet can be made, he will make it. And more importantly, he's Ben's best friend. Poe is sort of Han's apprentice, and so he grew up around Ben and he went on all their missions. Poe calls everyone by their last name, except for Ben.
Ben, you owe me a drink.
What are you talking about?
I cleared out all the quad jets before you guys made it out. That was the deal.
No, you misunderstand. The bet was whether we could get the book before you took them down. We did. You owe me a drink.
Ben hefts the book at Poe.
Oh, come on. You know if I was in the runner, I would have been done in half the time. It's way more nimble than this hunk of junk.
Hey, watch your mouth.
Han cuts them off.
This ship has 100 times more heart and soul than that dinky little fighter of yours.
Chewie, having just ascended from the gunner chair, lets out a roar of agreement.
Exactly. Now go get the hyperdrive ready.
The four enter the cockpit and lightspeed jump out of Ashla's atmosphere. We see the Millennium Falcon fly over the surface of Coruscant, capital of the Galactic Republic and home to the new Jedi Temple. The Falcon passes over Futuristic City into a slightly more rural corner of Coruscant. The new Jedi Temple is not the same building used in the prequels, but instead a structure surrounded by a little bit more nature, almost like an oasis in the desert of buildings. The Falcon lands next to the temple, and we see Han, Ben, Poe, and Chewbacca walk inside. We cut to a shot of Luke Skywalker, now a Jedi Master, meditating in his chamber inside the temple. The chamber is like an office, library, and meditation room all rolled into one. We see Luke open his eyes. He has sensed his friend's return. Radius K, Jedi teacher at the school, enters the room.
Master Luke, General So...
Han's back. Thank you, Kay.
Radius smiles and nods.
Of course you sensed them coming.
He turns to leave the room. The first in after him is Ben Solo.
Master, you won't believe it.
Ben excitedly holds out the book to Luke.
We found it. It's real.
It better be real.
Han enters the room behind him, followed by Poe and Chewbacca.
Otherwise, I just wasted the last 3 months of my life.
Luke smirks and runs his hand over the cover.
Well, good news, Han. This is it. The origin of the Jedi themselves. The very people who wield the light side of the Force contained all of their knowledge in this very script. You all did fantastic work.
At this, Chewie lets out a celebratory... Luke laughs.
You're right. You do deserve a break. Unfortunately...
Oh no, you gotta be kidding me.
Poe pipes up.
We don't even get a day off? I was gonna take a trip to the steam baths on Genetra.
Your vacation's going to have to wait.
Placing the book on his desk, Luke sets down a small projector and activates it. A holographic star map of the galaxy appears before them.
It appears our trip to the Mustafar library was more fruitful than we assumed, because in one of those holocrons, we found this.
Luke points to a specific point on the map, and the other four lean in to get a closer look.
Right here, on the moon of Sinarus 6, is the oldest Sith temple in existence.
Wait,
Ben interjects.
are you saying there's...
A dark side equivalent to the temple you just came from. Yes, and that also means a book containing the origin of Sith knowledge. Fortunately for you, we know where it is this time, so you won't need to go scouring the galaxy for months on end.
Han places his hand over the projector, shutting it off.
I'm a Dameron on this one. Why is it so important we go get the book now? Especially when the Senate's breathing down our necks about the anarchists, and the planet's still under Empire control. Is the scavenger hunt really what we should be focusing on?
At this, Luke furrows his brow.
I've sensed something. It was only an inkling when I sent you out last, but I'm sure of it now.
Luke turns to look out the window at a sky full of stars.
In the near future, it's coming. A great movement in the Force. Unlike anything I've ever known.
He turns back to face the others.
The future is always cloudy and difficult to read. What's coming could be true peace, the end of this senseless bloodshed that's clung to the galaxy since the Empire fell. Or it could mean something terrible, an end to the balance of the Force, the return of the dark. It could even mean the end of the galaxy as we know it.
Okay, I get it.
Han throws up his hands in defeat.
Maybe you should explain anyway, so, Chewie gets it.
Poe awkwardly remarks. Chewie lets out a small whimper, offended.
The books may contain knowledge that helps you interpret the visions you're seeing.
Ben tries to explain.
Yes,
Luke takes a seat at his desk and runs his hand over the text once again.
this one might. But the other, the Tome of Sith Knowledge, I want that secured as soon as possible, so that it doesn't fall into the hands of anyone who might use it for harm. Ben, Han, you leave first thing in the morning.
Yes, Master.
Ben accepts.
Poe, Chewie, I've got a different assignment for you two. Han was right. We have a lot of people still left to liberate. I want you two to head over to Kynos, the ocean planet. See if you can't tear down the projector shield they got over their primary platform. Should be no problem in the runner. You do that, those poor people will take down the remaining Empire forces themselves.
Roger that.
You two are dismissed.
As Poe turns to leave, he whispers.
Hey, Chewie, how much you want to bet we make it back before they do?
Luke stands and walks toward Ben and Han.
Ben, I know you're curious. I'll discuss the contents of that book with you when you're back, all right?
You'd better. After all that work I took to find it?
Luke laughs a little at that.
Listen, I don't know much about the Cinerus system. No one does. None of the planets are very habitable. So be careful, all right?
Don't tell me after 30 years you're finally getting all mushy, are you?
Han asks.
I just missed you too.
Luke embraces them both in a hug. He then pulls back.
Leia's missed you too. Both of you. After this mission, I'll give you some time off to go and see her.
I wouldn't mind that.
Han turns to leave the room, and Ben follows.
You know, it's been so long, I've actually started to miss her nagging. Maybe the galaxy really is ending.
They both leave the room. We cut to the ocean planet of Kynos. Covered almost entirely in water, we focus in on a large artificial landmass, a lone metal island in the middle of miles of crashing waves. A military base, the island is crawling with Empire loyalists. Several aquatic stormtroopers are keeping guard in front of the gigantic energy dome that covers the entire city. Their suits are worn and ragged. This outpost clearly no longer receives any funds from the Empire, which fell more than 30 years prior. A small, submarine-like ship emerges from the waves, and someone peeks out of the top. One of the guards spots it, but before he can alert the others, the figure inside the submarine launches a grappling hook from his wrist, latching onto the trooper, and throws him into the water. Launching the grapple again, the figure pulls himself onto the platform. We see he's wearing a sort of tactical armor, covering his entire body, including an eerie helmet not dissimilar to a gas mask. This is a new character I've created for this film. I won't spoil anything about him just yet, but his presence will make up for the fact that characters like Snoke and Hux don't appear. Unlike both of those characters, I plan on giving him a backstory as well as a motivation. This guy's whole shtick will be the insane abundance of weapons and gadgets I've given him to use. But you're about to see that right now, so I'll just shut up. A voice crackles through the masked man's headset.
Captain Diavo, is the area secure?
Not yet.
Retrieving a small knife-like object from his belt, Diavo aims it at one of the 3 troopers guarding a door on the level below him. He tosses it, and the trooper it hits right in the neck falls to the ground. We see a small flicker of light off of the blade, and when the second trooper goes to inspect the body, he's electrocuted as soon as they touch. The third trooper is shocked. "Hey, what the—" He's cut off as a blaster bolt strikes him in the head. Diavo returns the blaster to his belt.
Finn, we're all clear up here.
We see Finn, dressed in a significantly less battle-ready version of Diavo's attire, pick up several pieces of electrical equipment inside the submarine.
Got it. I'm coming ashore.
As Finn climbs a ladder out of the submarine up to the metal platform with the door, he carefully steps over the bodies of the fallen troopers. Diavo speaks into his comms again.
Distraction team, are you in position?
There's a brief pause as Finn is setting up his electronic equipment around the door.
Distraction team? Jetter, are you in position?
The crackle of Diavo's subordinate finally comes back through the comm. "Yeah, we're in position, but we have a bit of a problem." Diavo's voice gets gruffer at this.
What sort of problem?
"It looks like Crix wasn't able to jam their communicators. They might be using a new frequency."
What?
"There isn't a single guard over here, sir. They all seem to be converging on your location, sir." Diavo jumps down to the deck below, landing next to Finn. He picks up one of the dead trooper's rifles.
Finn, how long will it take you to get through that door?
About 2 minutes. Why?
Diavo lets out a sigh.
It doesn't matter. Next time you're in charge of jamming the enemy communicators.
Okay.
Just make it snappy. We're about to have company.
At that, several Aqua Troopers rise up from the water, climbing onto the metal deck. Diavo blasts them back into the water, only to see several more around the corner. He places a metallic ball on the ground that activates an energy shield around Finn and the door.
This'll give you 90 seconds.
Finn nervously glances behind him, seeing the approaching mob of 20 or so enemies.
Can you get rid of all of them in 90 seconds?
I only need 60.
The troopers unleash a barrage of blaster bolts toward Diavo. He dodges down, sprinting toward a wall. Leaping into the air, his boots magnetize, and he begins running along the wall, using the rifle to mow down enemies. Continuing his momentum, Diavo jumps off of the wall overhead of the troopers. They fire at him in the air, and he activates a spinning disc of red energy out of an emitter on his right arm. A light shield. This is my addition to the plethora of lightsaber and lightsaber-adjacent weapons that litter the Star Wars canon. The prequels gave us Darth Maul's double saber, and the sequels had Kylo Ren's hilted saber. I think this is a much more creative use of kyber crystal technology, and it's actually something that exists in the EU canon, but it's so obscure that there isn't even any art of it. Now, if you think a light shield is a stupid idea, humor me for a moment. Imagine the first Avenger, Captain America, but instead of his shield being used as a blunt weapon for striking and throwing, it completely eviscerates anything it comes in contact with. Is that not ridiculously cool? Deflecting the blast mid-air with his light shield, Diavo lands, pausing only for a second before rushing into the crowd of troopers. Now in close range, their weapons are much less effective. He mows them down with ease, slicing with abandon and reflecting the stray blaster bolt back at whoever fired it. The last trooper hits the floor, and Diavo looks down over all of them.
Empire scum.
He scoffs as he deactivates his light shield. Returning to Finn, he disengages the barrier around him.
That was incredible, sir.
It almost was. Took me 64 seconds.
Still, I don't think there's anyone in the galaxy that could beat you.
We'll see about that soon enough. How's that door coming?
Just about... Got it.
Finn activates the machines, and together they create electrical vibrations, causing the metal of the door to ripple like water.
And with that,
Finn deactivates the machines, and the metal returns to a solid form.
we're all set. Should be able to cut right through now.
Finn takes a step back, and Diavo activates his light shield and begins to carve into the door.
That frick metal is something else. If we hadn't destabilized it first, it would have been unbreakable. Can you imagine if we just came in with no intel, trying to shoot this thing down? It would have been a suicide mission.
I only start jobs I know I can complete.
Diavo finishes slicing a hole in the door and steps through. Finn follows close behind. Before them is a gigantic battery.
Speaking of which,
Diavo takes the blaster off his hip and shoots into the core of the battery. Sparks fly, and after a couple electrical surges, the entire machine begins to break apart.
mission complete.
The gigantic electrical barrier covering the city begins to flicker and fade away. Imperial officers inside the city start scrambling, trying to assess the situation. Back on the docks, Diavo activates his communicator again.
A4, you're all set. Go get your people back.
With that, hundreds of figures begin to rise out of the water. Fish-like beings, natives of the planet Kinos. They storm the city, attacking stormtroopers in the streets with crude weapons made of bone and coral, and liberating their brethren who had been enslaved to work in the factories. We fade out as the city is taken back by its rightful owners. We fade back in the next morning. Diavo overlooks Finn and two others, who are sorting through a large pile of damaged Empire weapons. Finn holds one up to him.
We could use the barrel of this blaster rifle to repair the astro tubing in the lower deck.
Diavo stands up.
Good find, kid. Why don't you load everything up? I get a feeling we'll be having company very soon.
With that, Diavo begins to walk back to his submarine in the water. But before he can make it far, the Zenith Runner soars over the horizon, and after looping around, lands between Diavo and his ship. Poe Dameron exits the runner and looks around, confused. He approaches Diavo.
Hey, what's going on? Who are you guys? I thought this planet was still under Empire control.
Don't worry, Aaron boy. The Republic doesn't need to dirty its hands here. I handled it.
Diavo attempts to walk around Poe, but Chewbacca exits the runner and steps in front of him.
Listen, buddy, I don't know who you are, but if you want to keep those arms, you better answer my questions, or my friend here might tear them right off you.
I'm not a bounty hunter. I'm not an anarchist. And I'm certainly not Empire. My name is Diavo, and I just did your job for you. So try to be a little more thankful.
Knocking away Chewie's paw with the back of his hand, Diavo begins to walk away again.
Hey, I didn't say you could leave!
Diavo keeps walking.
You two should be thankful you didn't bring any Jedi scum with you, or else I might not have been so patient about this little interaction.
What did you just...
Let him go.
Poe turns around to see A4, leader of the Kinosians, with his webbed hand on his shoulder.
That man saved our people and asked for nothing in return. He's a hero. I'd hate to see him come to blows with the Republic.
Poe looks back at Diavo, bewildered, watching him walk away. Diavo pauses and then turns his head and calls back.
If you still want to feel useful, there's a settlement on Zarzaban that needs some help. I was gonna get to them soon, but I've got another mission at the moment. Those people are in trouble. You'd be doing some real good.
With that, Diavo jumps off the dock, down into his submarine. Poe turns back to Chewie.
Well, bud, what do you think? I guess we do have time for those steam baths now. But we should look into that Zarzaban situation. I'll contact Skywalker and see if he knows anything about it.
Poe hops back into the runner and begins to contact Coruscant. Finn walks by A4, arms full of various Empire weapons.
Are you sure he doesn't want anything? Those weapons aren't worth much, and we do have some precious jewels we'd like to give as an award. Anything we can do to show our gratitude.
Finn smiles wide.
No, Captain Diavo never takes payment. Every time someone brings it up, he starts talking about how the mission is reward enough.
He sounds like a man of tremendous honor. You must feel so privileged to serve under him.
Yeah, I am.
Finn takes his gear to the submarine. Poe deactivates his comm and readies the Zenith rudder for takeoff.
Well, Chewie, looks like that Diavo guy was right. Skywalker just confirmed it. We're taking a tour to Zarzaban.
The Zenith runner rises into the air and then launches out of the atmosphere. Shortly after, Diavo's submarine rises from the water, actually a starship itself. It blasts off into the sky as well, in the opposite direction. To be continued. I hope you like this first portion of UnWriting Star Wars Episode 7. Make sure to subscribe to see what happens next. This whole episode should take about 4 videos to complete. I have the entire episode storyboarded, and all of my work from here is just scripting and editing. Definitely let me know what you think of the changes I've made so far down in those comments. I'd love to hear your thoughts and opinions. May the Force be with you, and stay frosty.